we'll start. I think we're just missing Councillor Lineker.
That's correct at this stage.
Okay, let's make a start. Well, welcome everybody to this meeting of Harpenden Town Council's Community Services Committee, which is being held virtually. If I could ask everybody to keep their video on, but mute unless you're speaking, that's to reduce background noise. So this is going to be broadcast on our YouTube channel, and I'll start with the first item on the agenda, which is apologies. I think we got one from Mr. Councillor Cowley.
Yes, that's correct, Chair. So Councillor Cowley has got a personal appointment, so he gives his apologies, although I understand he is hoping to join the meeting part way through.
Right, thank you very much. Right, declarations of interest from councillors, if any. There is an item about the allotments. In my case, yep, thank you. In my case, my wife has an allotment, but not in the East Harpenden Allotment Society. So I'm not sure. I don't think I need to declare an interest, but there it is if I do. Councillor Priggen.
Same sort of situation. I have an allotment. I'm not in the East Harpenden Garden Society, Allotment Society. The other one.
Okay.
For you, it's the same. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, anyone else? Any other declarations of interest? No? Okay. Right, item 3, Chairman's report and urgent items. I don't have any. Do you have anything to add, Carl? Anything urgent?
No, Chair, no urgent items.
Oh, thank you. Public questions in accordance with Standing Order 22.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. So we now move on to the minutes to confirm the minutes of the meeting of this committee held on the 16th of September. Can I sign those as an accurate record? Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure exactly how I sign them these days, but I will do. Okay, moving on to item 6, minutes of other meetings referred to the Community Services Committee. I think we're just receiving these, i.e. noting them. So does anybody have any comments on the items? No? Okay, we'll receive all of those. Thank you. Now move on to the officers' reports. The first one is the forward planner and resolution tracker, starting at page 17. Do you wish to comment on these, Carl?
No, Chair, I don't have anything to add that is not already set out in the report.
Right, thank you very much. Any comments from councillors? Councillor Hill.
Thank you. There's just one thing I noticed was number 3 of the resolution tracker, horse ride improvements. So and it says completion target date March 2022. I think somewhere later in the pack it says something about it's been put on hold indefinitely because of COVID, which is, you know, totally understandable. But I wonder if circumstances allow, whether, and if it is possible, whether the target could be put to maybe something like autumn next year, because part of the benefit of those improvements would be to, you know, mud in the winter when it gets on the common pretty bad. And then I kind of think sort of by March time, it could sort of come into spring and summer, you kind of lose the immediate benefit of it. Just wondered if that would be possible.
Yes, Carl, can you comment on that one, please?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. So the aspiration for the horse ride improvements is to deliver that as soon as possible. So it may well end up being autumn next year. However, given the, I guess, unpredictability at the moment, What we do know is it's not going to be delivered in this financial year. So the target of March 2022 just reflects that it will be delivered in the next financial year. So we would hope to be able to do that as soon as possible at a time that is good for the users, but also a good time of the year in order to make the improvements. But at this time, it would be, I don't want to put a target in there that is unachievable, partly because actually the funding isn't there at the moment for that, given the situation that we're in. So if we can bring it forward, we will do so. It will remain in progress on the resolution tracker. So as we come back to this committee in January and onwards, if there is a way to bring that forward realistically, we will do so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments on the resolution tracker? Okay, then can I refer you to the recommendation on page 17, 2.1? I won't read it out. We're just noting and approving Appendix A and Appendix B. So all in favour of that? Thank you. Okay, now move on to the next one, 7.2 on page 23. We're noting this budgetary control items. Presumably this takes into account the fact that we're going to have less money because of COVID situations, reduced car park revenues and all that sort of stuff. Do you want to say anything about this one, Carl?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. So I can just pick up on that point. So the budgetary control position, what we've done in Appendix A is we've tried to set out the original budget that was set out for this financial year. We've set out the revised budget approved by Council, and we are monitoring the budget against the revised budget that was put in place. So the point that you make there, Chair, around the commercial income, that has been built into the revised budget, but things are still very volatile. So we are just receiving the figures in from Lydekker Car Park, for example, and they're quite low so far this year. But we've had some positives as well. We've managed to secure what was a higher than expected ice cream fee and concourse traders. So the commercial income remains very volatile. At the moment, on the community services budget, it's an adverse variance of about £5,000, which can be is largely accounted for unexpected health and safety tree works that we've had. You would remember me saying before that unfortunately when we get any high winds, we always have some trouble with our trees. So we've had to spend more there than we expected. So broadly £5,000, we think that will be brought back in line with the wider spend, but that's the position at the moment, but it is quite volatile.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're just any comments on that? No, we're just noting that one. So I think we just move on to the next item. I think if nobody's got any comments. Okay, agenda item 7.3, page 27. So we're looking at the. Yep. Additional budgets. Again, Carl, do you want to say a few words on this one?
So, Chair, what I thought I would just do is take the opportunity just to remind the committee of the timetable for this, really. So this evening you're being asked to consider your element of the budget, and by yours, obviously, I mean the Community Services Committee. Next week at CPF, that committee will consider its element, and then through into January, the CPF committee will pull all that together and make a recommendation to Council as normal. Later on in December, early January, we will have a better picture as to the wider budget, because by that time we will have a better understanding of how our commercial income has performed throughout the year, what our tax base is going to be for next year, and some other things, other variables that we're not sure of at the moment. So you're asked to approve your element of the budget now, and that moves into the next stage through into the winter period.
Okay, thank you. Any comments on this this budget item?
I think you've got Councillor Lineker, I think, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lineker.
Thank you, Chair. I was just noting staff costs, and I was wondering what the progression is. So from 2021 up to 23-24, it's not an even progress. So I just wondered how they were arrived at.
So, Chair, the staffing costs will need to go through HR committee prior to the January budget. So the HR committee has to look at the staffing cost element. And the reason that HR committee will need to do that is because there are some staffing costs that we're currently funding through earmark reserves. And so that earmark reserve ends partway through next year. So HR committee are going to need to consider whether those staffing resources are made permanent through the budget. So at the current time, that staff cost we've put in there as an indication so that this committee is aware of them, but actually the HR committee will need to consider that in detail as part of the budget setting process. So the cost increase are partly due to the 2.75% increase in salary as part of the national agreement. There is a change to the pension contributions, which is in there, which has gone down slightly. But the other chunk that is in there is actually the two positions we've got at the moment that are contractor positions that are due to finish partway through the year. So that's the second events officer and the maintenance team leader. So HR committee will need to consider that as part of the budget setting.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments from anybody? Okay, so on page 27, we're asked to essentially approve the net budget and note the total staff costs for the whole council. That's 2.1.1 and 2.1.2. All in favour of that? Thank you very much. Now move on to 7.4 on page 37. Phil, do you want to take us through this one?
Yes, Chair, I will. It's been a very challenging year for the obvious reason, COVID-19. And so the setbacks that we've suffered have been both in terms of the available budget to deliver the objectives of the management plans, but also the capacity in terms of staff and volunteers to actually deliver the activities as well. Mm-hmm. The biggest, the most significant revelation in this report, I believe, is the fact that we are currently drafting a new management plan for the Batford Springs Local Nature Reserve. For the reasons that are highlighted in the report, the fact that we've identified with the recent spates of flooding that it really does need updating, because some of the actions are really not relevant anymore because of the amount of damage that gets inflicted when you get a severe flood down there. So that will be coming to the next Community Services Committee in January. An update.
Sorry, could I just ask where did that flooding occur?
Where did it occur?
Yeah, where sort of precisely on the?
Yes, so there's several severely impacted areas. One of them is the footpath but between the river and the Marquis Lane allotments. So it goes from the newly renovated bridge by the ford back up to near the zip line by the Marquis Lane play area. Okay. That's more than impassable when the river floods properly down there. The central part of the reserve, from the footbridge going through the middle that crosses the River Lee and the Chalk Stream, the area that leads from there towards the main stepping stones and the sleeper bridge and the sluice gate in the middle, that gets overrun with water. Mm-hmm. And there's an area down in Marquis Meadow which is approximately halfway down where the footpath slopes. At the bottom of that slope on the footpath, the field and the path flood considerably there. And I think the final bad part for flooding is a short section of footpath roughly halfway between the church and again the central footbridge. So there's several areas that are impacted by flooding, but you could also say that the central bit where the boreholes are, that gets overrun by water as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose it is a floodplain
Yes.
down there, so bound to expect some sort of flooding, as you know, as an alternative to flooding, you know, populated areas or whatever. I suppose there isn't really much we can do other than just plan for it.
Yes, Chair, and the other implication is that we don't want to spend a lot of money on a particular type of path in a particular area of the reserve if 6 months later the money's going to be wasted because it's been washed away by the flooding. So we're thinking about what can we do in that area that is going to be more sustainable than perhaps what we'd considered previously.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chair, could I just add something to that, Chair?
Yeah.
Just out of use, I've just managed to quickly dig out a couple of images, and I'll show one if that's okay, that just illustrates
Yeah, please do.
the point that Phil's just made there. So hopefully you can see.
Oh,
Can you see the river?
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if you can see my my cursor, but so
Yeah.
the tree to the right hand side. So this is actually the where there's supposed to be water, and the path here is where it's currently quite a muddy pathway. So in the management plan, the plan was to resurface these areas to make them more accessible year round. However, as you can see, I mean, this is from last month. If we were to resurface this area here, quite quickly, that surface is going to get washed away probably over one winter. So it literally would be money going down the river. So one of the things that we want to look at within the, I'll stop sharing. One of the things we'd like to look at within the revised management plans is that we still think that we need to do something potentially with the surface there. But could we have a slightly raised wooden boardwalk, for example, very sort of no sides, just a surface that, of course, when it floods, it would be out of use, but actually all year round, it would mean that you've got more accessible area without the danger of it being washed away. And there are lots of other images like that. And if it would be of interest, we can send them around to the committee afterwards. And there's also some videos, you know, without making Phil and I sound too sad, whenever it does rain in some key areas, we do try and get outside and film it, because it's the only way in which we can see the proper flow of water and see how some of our, in particular South Down ponds, digressing slightly, to see how our flood defences actually cope when it rains.
Yeah.
So happy to send those if it would be of interest.
Yeah, I think that will be very good for, you know, there's nothing like pictures and, you know, to illustrate what's happening. Yeah, okay, very good, thank you. Right, so we're just noting this one. Does anybody have any comments? Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add on the Batford Springs, I appreciate what you say about the path, and the picture you show illustrates the fact that it'd be quite difficult to do much about it, especially the part between you know, the new Marquis Bridge and the zip line, which floods regularly. But there's one area which is a bit of a concern quite often, and that's we're just sort of outside the play area, and between there and to the main central bit of which takes you back up either side. That quite often, you know, if not floods, then certainly gets quite sort of big puddles and quite muddy. And I think especially considering the fact that that's sort of access for the play area, and you know, you might have pushchairs or little kids, it kind of makes it quite difficult to access. And I wonder if, I mean, I don't know if Boardwalk would work there or some other solution, but that's just another area which I've noticed recently.
Okay, thank you. Just for Mr. Cowley joining us, thank you. We're on page 37.
Thanks.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. Any other comments, or can we just note this one and move on? Okay, duly noted. Right. 7.5. Page 45, agenda item 7.5. This is the replacement of the Holcroft garages. It's actually 2 garages, isn't it? So
It is, Chair, yes.
So 15,000 odd. So it's about 7.5 per garage, basically. Yes, we've agreed all this in principle, haven't we? And you're going to get the quotations and then come back to us to approve. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair. And we looked at quite a few different options to try to get the best value for money. Some of the obstructions, probably not the right word, but some of the obstacles that we encountered were the thickness of the existing base there, the size of the existing base, the fact that some of the off-the-shelf products you can get for less money only withstand winds up to a certain speed. So the quotation that we've got in there is the best quotation that we can get for something that actually fits the needs and is safe.
Yes, and presumably they're going to use these for storing things like mowers and strimmers and that sort of stuff, not really cars.
Yes, Chair, it's for tools and equipment, as you've just highlighted there, and also things like bags of compost that they sell in their on-site shop. Okay.
All right, thank you. Any comments from any councillors? This item? No. Okay. Well then, the recommendation 2.1, we're asked to approve the release of 20,000 from the capital reserves in order to replace the Holcroft asbestos garages, as agreed by council on the 11th of May. All in favour? Thank you very much. Right, item 7.6 on page 47, the tender specification for the Christmas lights. Do you want to take us through this one, Phil?
Yes, Chair, thank you. The current agreement with our current contractor is coming to an end following this Christmas. And so we need to go out to tender to get a new agreement in place. The council set up a working party to look at this and develop the specification, which is attached for your consideration and approval. There's just one thing that I've actually spotted just before the meeting, and it's just a tweaking of the words. Although there's 2 places where it refers to the Christmas tree aspect of the tender specification as being optional. It's not necessary that they actually have to do that, but they can quote for it, so the council can decide whether it's a good option to take up on. But what I've actually noticed is that one of the places where it refers to Christmas trees, I have put that this is optional. But when I look through the list, there are things in there that they will have to do whether they supply the Christmas trees or not. So I just need to tweak the word to show that it is optional for supply of the tree, but the other parts of that particular paragraph are not optional. It's just a very minor addition of a couple of words.
Okay, I think it's worth stating as a general background to this that the residents of Harpenden do expect us to put on a good show of lights at Christmas. In the past, where things have maybe not been up to standard, they've certainly let us know that. Some of you will remember the situations we've had before, and also, of course, it draws in a lot of people to the town, and this is good for the high street, particularly currently. Not just COVID, but the fact that high streets throughout the country are under pressure with reduced footfall. So anything we can do which helps support our high street, is to be welcomed, I think. So any comments on this report? Councillor Heritage, then Councillor Priggen.
Do we know whether the current contractor would like to stay if they can submit the right tender? Are they happy?
Yes, Phil, go ahead.
So Chair, the answer to that is that the current contractor, I know, will be keen to submit a tender submission, but obviously they haven't seen this, as no contractors have seen this as yet, so it's subject to them changing. But they obviously have the option to change their mind once they read it, but as far as I understand at the minute, before they've actually seen the tender specification, they would be intending to compete for it.
Okay, Councillor Priggen.
Thank you. Similar question along those lines. Currently, we always ask for 5 years. Is that normal? Do all councils ask for 5 years, or is that just what we do?
Chair, regarding this one, the reason that we've made it a 5-year contract is simply because if the option that the council goes for is to purchase the lights, lights are a very expensive commodity, so you'd want to get value for money out of them by having them for 5 years rather than 3 years.
Yeah, and on that exact point, have we currently, I saw in there is some bits we've already bought. I wasn't sure what the balance was now. Have we bought them or rented the current ones?
So Chair, the current lights are owned by the council, but there is only certain parts of the scheme which would be considered as new enough to continue within the new contract. The majority of it will probably be new lights required.
And so, sorry, this is my final bit. The bits that are good enough to continue, they will be made available to all the people that wish to tender. It's not just the current contractor.
Yes, Chair, there's within the tender specification, I think there's about 3 items. One of them is the Southdown building festoons, which are newer than some of the other scheme, and that is pointed out within the tender specification. The festoons on the Town Hall and Park Hall are mentioned with a view to tenderers making a judgment call as to whether or not those lights have still got life in them for this contract, so not necessarily needing to be replaced. And the other aspect I can think of, which is pointed out within the specification, is the cages that go round the lamppost lights. There is potentially opportunity to reuse those and put new lighting designs on those cages if the contractor wished to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the award criteria, point 12, it says sustainability of proposal. Can you just sort of explain what we mean by that? Because I don't quite understand it fully.
So, Chair, I think that things that we'd be looking at in order to evaluate that would be things such as low energy use bulbs and that sort of thing.
Okay, Councillor Cousin.
Thank you, Chair. Are we trying to aim for a similar, I don't know, number of lights coverage, or are we trying to expand it at all? Could we have a few more lights up Station Road, for example?
So, Chair, the Working Party, they considered that the scheme, the extent of the scheme that we currently have is something that they would like to repeat as much as is possible, but there are areas of improvement that are highlighted within here. One of them is, as the councillor has just raised, Station Road, and seeing what we can do to improve the lights in that area. And also Batford Green often presents challenges with what we can do there. And so the Working Party are looking at, decided that the specification should include decorations for the street lamps within the vicinity of the little roundabout at the junction there at Batford Green, to improve that as well.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor, rather, Carl.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to add a couple of points to the questions and answers. So under the sustainability criteria, there is a growing number of companies now who are looking at biodegradable products as well. And so the criteria is kind of reflects that really. If there are companies that wish to tender who have products that are more sustainable, then that's the reason why we wanted to make it more attractable to those kind of tenderers to apply. So that's one point on the sustainable side of things. The point about the existing stock, if you like, we've deliberately kept the option of having the additional stock available to a new tender in the contract. However, we should note that much of that is coming to the end of its lifespan, and if I was a contractor, it wouldn't be very attractive to me to bid for and to use some products that are somebody else's, that you have limited understanding as to how usable they are, and things like that. So we put it in there, but I'm not expecting many tenderers to want to use the existing stock that's going to be coming down. So the stock in Southdown, that's different because that's up and around the buildings already. But they may come forward with some attractive proposals. And the final point I just want to take is that we have set out two options for how we essentially purchase the supply of festive lights. There is the upfront purchase, which is the approach we've had this time, or there is the hiring of the lights. Now, we've deliberately again kept our options open, but I would just like to say at this point there are significant benefits to hiring the lights and not to owning them yourself. So as I say, we'll keep that open and see what the tender has come back for. But actually down the line, I think the officer's advice would be, hiring is highly desirable for lots of reasons. It makes it a lot easier to manage contracts. If something goes wrong with a set of lights, then you're paying for a certain product and they get replaced automatically. Whereas actually there's lots of grey areas where you own the actual product yourselves.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brigham, were you indicating? You're on mute.
Sorry, I keep on double clicking. I'm so sorry. No, it just comes back to the reusing, and I think the hiring point is a very valid one. I think to me, if we are what is being reused would count towards sustainability. It seems very wasteful. If something is still usable, then how are we going to dispose of it? And ideally, could we reuse it? I just wanted to, I don't know, flag that up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to come back on that, Carl, or are you completed your comment?
Chair, all I would say is that we've deliberately kept the options open, so we'll see what the tender has come back with. I think on the point of reusing what we've got already, obviously that's got a sustainability element to it, but the issue that could be there is that could compromise the quality of the scheme and the reliability of the scheme as well if you're reusing products at the end of their life. And going back to your original point, Chair, around the quality standards that we've set in Harpenden, we wouldn't want to compromise that. But we should very much see what comes back in from tenderers. The Working Party, along with Phil and I, will be assessing those and all of the recommendations, all of the detail, the many tenders that we're going to get in. This committee is going to have the benefit of pouring through every page to have a look at all that as well. So roll on January, I think it is, Phil, isn't it?
Okay, and will this committee make the final decision, or does it go to the council?
So, Chair, so the working party will make a recommendation to this committee.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So, are we? If Councillor Scriven.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, just really out of interest more than anything. I was wondering what does actually happen to them if they're disposed of when you move on to a new 5-year contract? Are they literally binned, or is there some kind of trying to pass them on to other smaller towns and villages that might be able to make perfectly good use of them? And then the other point was, if you do own the products and there is a breakdown or damage to them during that 5-year cycle, are replacements always available, or do you end up having to buy a full new set, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so Chair, perhaps if I'll just pick up and give it a first go, and then Phil will come in, I guess. So the bit about what do we do with the existing products if we don't reuse them, I think at this stage we're deliberately kind of saying we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So once we see what tenders come in, if it looks like we're going to need to dispose of them, then we'll be investigating what the best way of doing that is. So there could be options around, you know, giving it to charities, to other businesses, and all sorts of things like that. So we will look at that in the new year once we know whether that's going to be sort of reality or not. I think the point about buying them is, now what you would have in the contract is you would have a reasonable replacement kind of clause. So, you know, if you brought some products and after 2 years, and they've got a 5-year lifespan, and after 2 years they were no good, you would expect actually them to be replaced and by the contractor. Of course, you know, there may be supply issues at that time, or those products might be obsolete. So you might have some problems. I guess the other bigger problem is the closer you get to the end of the lifespan of the product, the more pushback you're likely to get from the company you originally bought them from, to say kind of almost, you know, what do you expect now that, you know, they're coming towards the end of it. This is the kind of the you know, usual lifespan of a product. So that's a couple of reasons why purchasing are not always favourable. I don't know if Phil might have a couple of other points to make, or maybe I've covered it really well.
Yeah, Chair, the town clerk has covered all the points I was going to make. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we discovered in the past was that there are different types of lights, you know, and one of the problems is that if you bring in a new contractor, they're going to say, well, we don't use those, we use these. And that's part of the difficulty. And the other thing is some of the stuff gets left in the trees, doesn't it? Because it's a bit of a nightmare taking them down and putting them back up again every year.
Yeah.
So, you know, they tend to degrade a bit simply because of that, but it's so costly to keep shifting them in and out. I think that's part of the difficulty.
That's correct, Chair. And I just add another thing is as with anything bit of technology, which these lights are, things change really quickly. So if you're tied down to a product you own for a 5-year period, and after 2 years you get this new amazing, even more biodegradable product that, you know, is super sustainable.
Well, not too degradable.
Well, yeah, perhaps not in heavy rain or something like that. But you get my point. You know, if we're tied down to something, a product we own for 5 years, that takes away the flexibility of, you know, innovation as new products come on board throughout the period of a contract.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, any other points, or can we move to the recommendation? Okay, let's go to the recommendation, page 47. 2.1, committee is asked to approve the tender specification at Appendix A that is recommended by the Christmas Lights Working Party. All in favour? Thank you very much. What's next? But if we come to the end, hang on, let me just go back to the beginning.
Yes, Chair, that's the last item this evening.
Yep, and there's no exempt business. So I think we're done. Thank you very much. Meeting closed at 8:10.
Good
Thanks
night,
very much.
everyone.
Everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Good night.